Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be breaking down prompt number 4 for the CommonApp essay. This is kind of a series I'm making to break down and give examples of good and average for every single one of these prompts. I hope that is helpful. If you don't know who I am, my name is Naman. I'm a medical student. I've been editing essays for the past 4 or 5 years on and off, and I'm making these videos because I want to help you figure out what are the strategies and lessons that I've learned from editing essays that you can use to kind of write 99th percentile essays for your college application. So let's get started. This prompt is describe a problem you've solved or a problem you'd like to solve. It can be an intellectual challenge, a research inquiry, an ethical dilemma, anything that is of personal importance, no matter the scale. Explain its significance to you and what steps you took or could be taken to identify a solution. And when I kind of think about this, I think about people who are really interested in like engineering or math or science or research, but it really could be anything. It could be kind of anything that you've encountered in your life, or anything that you've kind of read about, anything that you find really significant to you, and exactly what you try to do to figure out the solution to this. And I've read a lot of these types of essays that answer prompt number 4, and I think it's a really interesting prompt. But I feel like there are some common mistakes that people make when trying to answer this prompt. The first one is I think that people start out with problems that are way too large that they cannot solve themselves. And I see problems kind of like I want to figure out the solution to global warming, or I want to figure out the cure to cancer. And the reason why these are not those that great essays is not because they're really difficult to solve, but because the student doesn't really have a very specific solution that they have in mind. They haven't narrowed down the problem enough that they could figure out exactly what steps they can take to identify a solution. The cure to cancer, nobody's exactly figured out if there is even a cure to cancer, what that means. And there's so many different cancers that can metastasize to so many places. So what exactly do you mean by finding a cure to cancer? And would that mean like radiotherapy, chemotherapy, all those things, right? If they're talking about sending rockets to Mars or something, well, what exactly does that mean? What is the solution you're looking for, and why is that a problem? These are all things that you have to kind of think about. Is it feasible for you to solve that? And have you narrowed down the problem enough where you're actually figuring out what steps you could take? And if you could kind of narrow down your problem, it's a great way to write an essay that has a very structured approach to it. But you don't want to focus on problems that are not well defined. So start out with defining a problem really well and figuring out how you would solve it. So if you say, I want to solve global warming, it's very difficult to figure out what steps you can take. But if you figure out, well, I want to decrease pollution in my city by, changing the trash disposal policies or something like that. That's something that is could be of very personal importance. It could be something that you have exact steps for, and it could be something that you can identify a solution to. So that's kind of what I want to talk about at first before we go into the good and bad examples. But start out with a good example of an introduction. So this is what I think could be a pretty excellent example for an introduction. As a first generation college student, I was deeply troubled by the lack of resources and support for low income students like myself. I firsthand saw the struggles and obstacles my peers faced, and it motivated me to take action. So, the reason why I think this is a great introduction is because it automatically, very quickly introduces you to what the problem is. And it's something that is personally meaningful to the student and something that they figured out through firsthand experience. And you can kind of see that this is setting expectations for what the rest of the story is going to be about, which is what action did they take to kind of help people figure out what resources are available for low income students or first generation college students. And you can see that it might be actually a feasible problem for them to tackle. It's a well defined problem. How can you provide more resources and support to low income students? So it starts out with a well defined problem. Here's an average introduction. I've always been interested in environmental issues, and I think that one of the biggest problems facing us today is climate change. I'd like to do something and help address the issue. I bet if you looked at and you read through all the CommonApp essays, you would see that the answers to prompt number 4, a lot of them are climate change. And I think that this is not a well-defined problem. It is a huge problem, but it's not a well-defined problem. What country are you addressing climate change in? What do you define as climate change? Are you looking for alternate energy sources, things like that? When do you think this has to be addressed, and when does it become irreversible? It's it's also too big of a problem for somebody to come up with exact steps to figure out. But you can figure out how to approach pollution in your local community. You can figure out how to change U.S. policy to address climate change. These are all more specific things that you can take steps in. So narrow down your problem to make it a little bit more well defined. Okay, let's go to the problem. So this is an excellent example of how to write about the problem. The lack of access to quality education and mentorship for low-income students like myself is a systematic problem that perpetuates inequality and social stratification. To address this problem, I conducted extensive research and collaborated with community leaders and policymakers to advocate for increased funding and programs for low-income students. Through my efforts, I was able to secure thousands of dollars in scholarships and grants, and I helped to establish a mentorship program for first-generation college students. So you can kind of see that this person is not just wishy-washy about sort of like the problem that they're looking at. They kind of already taken some actions and kind of already figured out that, they've secured thousands of dollars in scholarships and grants, and they've helped create a mentorship program. And so this is like obviously something that's very important to them. And it's not just something that they think about, but something that they've taken action. And obviously not everything you've taken action to address, but hopefully you've kind of not only thought about the problem, you've also like kind of figured out steps you've taken that first step to kind of grasping a solution. It could just be educating yourself about the problem, educating yourself so you can one day solve the problem. It doesn't have to be something big, but hopefully you've taken these tiny little steps so you can figure out how to solve that problem. Okay. The average example of the problem statement is climate change is a complex and multifaceted problem that requires global efforts to address. I've been reading articles and watching documentaries about the effects of climate change, and it's clear that we need to take action now to reduce our carbon emissions and transition to renewable energy sources. So this is, again, not a terrible essay. It's just an average essay because they're not really defining the problem very well. They actually say that it's complex and multifaceted. So they're not exactly explaining what they would do. They're being pretty vague about what solutions require. They haven't really taken any active any active effort to kind of change anything. And obviously, I said it's totally okay if you want to say education is taking the first step, but this is not enough education. This is kind of like what most people do about climate change. You want to show that you're taking the next level. Maybe you want to reach out to your local, I don't know if there's a local board for people who want to address climate change, or if there's volunteer organizations in your local community. But maybe that could be a great first step to kind of educating yourself and helping out with local initiatives, volunteer efforts, things like that. And if you can show that you're taking the first few steps to addressing a problem, it automatically makes it a lot clearer that you're really passionate about finding a solution. Okay, let's look at the solution. So this is an excellent example of a solution. The solution to this problem requires a comprehensive and long-term approach that addresses the root causes of poverty and educational inequality. It involves investing in early childhood education and providing targeted resources and location support for low-income students, and promoting equitable policies and practices in schools and universities. By working together as a community and a society, we can create a brighter and more just future for all. So you can kind of see that this person is talking about the solution and talking about it at a pretty large scale, at a social scale. And it's okay to do this because that person has already established that they've done things to kind of address the solution, but they're establishing the importance of the solution. And I've learned a lot from the student just from reading this, because I can kind of see that, okay, they're pretty passionate about this, and I can kind of expect what project they might be interested in at college. And so if I'm interested in accepting somebody who's really focused on at dealing with education inequality and root causes of poverty, then maybe this would be a student that I'd be really interested in. Okay, average example of this is, to help address this issue, I've been taking small steps in my daily life, such as reducing my energy consumption and using public transportation. I've also been talking to my friends and family about the importance of climate action and advocating for policy changes at the local and national levels. So again, this is not a bad example. This is just an average example because it's not enough. It's not sharing something that maybe other people haven't done. Talking to friends and family, something a lot of people do, and it's kind of, if you could show that you're getting involved with policy changes at a local level, or you're kind of doing something, then that would be a great thing. And it'd also be important if you can kind of say what the exact next steps would be to address this problem. And so this person hasn't really established what their next steps would be, and hasn't really explained how they're going to play any significant role in combating climate change. Okay, let's do the reflection. So this is the last part of the essay. And a reflection that's excellent would be, through the experience, I have learned the power of advocacy and the importance of using my voice and privilege to make a positive impact on the world. It has also shown me the resilience and potential of low-income students, inspired me to pursue a career in education and social justice. Today, I'm committed to fighting a more equitable and inclusive society where all students have access to resources and opportunities they need to succeed. So automatically, I know a lot about this person. I know what their mission statement is. I know what actions they've taken to kind of achieve that mission statement. I believe that they're going to be a good advocate for these things because they've already done things to help it and they have a personal experience. And so I kind of have a lot of trust in this person. And if I accepted them to my hypothetical university, I'd have a good idea about what sorts of mission they'd have in life and what they would want to get out of a college education. Okay. An average example of this would be, this experience has shown me the importance of taking personal responsibility for our impact on the environment and the power of collective action to create change. I know there's still a lot of work to be done, but I am committed to doing my part and inspiring others to do the same. So again, this is not a bad example. This is just an average example because it's not sharing enough about this person for me to be able to say, I know this person, I know who this person is. And that's kind of what you want at the end of this essay, is that the reader kind of feels like they have a bond with you or just knows who you are. And so if you can kind of focus on what's good and focus on what's the excellent examples, I think you'd have a really great essay that kind of defines a well-defined problem and explains what steps you've taken and what steps you would take to identify a solution. And if you can do that, then I think you can share a lot about who you are as a person and what you do with a college education. And ultimately, I think that's what would help you separate yourself from 99% of the essays. I really hope that was helpful. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.